When Mihai Dobre pulled into a quiet Peterborough estate just after midnight, he thought it was a routine delivery. Instead, it was an ambush. Seconds later, a shotgun blast echoed through the dark street, and Dobre lay slumped behind the wheel, bleeding out. This wasn't some gangland hit. It was the desperate scheme of two strung-out addicts. Liz Hutchinson and Christopher Pycraft, both lifelong criminals with messy pasts, figured they could rob a county lines drug runner, vanish into the estate, and walk away with cash and drugs. They couldn't have been more wrong about who they were targeting. The courier worked for the Turks, one of the most dangerous county lines operations tearing through the east of England. Within hours, both police and gang members were hunting for the killers. One suspect hid in a scrapyard. The other didn't even bother running, staying on the same estate where the murder happened. This is the true story of a robbery gone horribly wrong, a senseless killing, and the brutal gang revenge that followed. Robbing any dealer was stupid, but robbing this dealer, that was a death wish. Liz Hutchinson and Christopher Pycraft weren't just familiar with the system, they were churned out by it. At 30, Hutchinson had spent most of his adult life in trouble. His rap sheet told the whole story. He had hurt people badly, threatened others because of their race, carried knives in public, and fought with police officers. Nearly every police officer in Peterborough recognized him. Pycraft, at 40, had an even longer history. Over 100 offenses, mostly burglaries and theft. His downward spiral began when he fell from a building site, got hooked on painkillers, and never looked back. Both men were drifting through life, unemployed, addicted, always hunting for their next fix. They haunted the Peterborough estates where poverty seeps into the brickwork and old crimes blend into the background. During one bleary session, Hutchinson pitched his idea. He knew how to score quick cash. Rob a county lines dealer. But Pycraft didn't take much convincing. They weren't targeting some random street dealer. They were going after the Turks, a gang infamous for brutal enforcement. The Turks controlled a county lines network throughout Peterborough, operating through disposable phones and an ever-changing roster of couriers. In that world, everyone understood the unwritten rules. Work for the Turks and you're protected. Cross them and you're marked. But Hutchinson was confident. He said he had a shotgun. The plan seemed simple. Place an order, draw the courier into Crabtree Estate, and take everything. No struggle, no bloodshed. In their drug-hazed minds, nobody really got hurt. In reality, they were lighting a fuse to something far deadlier. The plan wasn't sophisticated, but in their altered state, Hutchinson and Pycraft thought it was foolproof. They'd order a large amount of drugs from the Turks County Lines number, wait for the courier to arrive, and hit him fast. Hutchinson claimed he could get hold of a shotgun. No problem. They'd pick the perfect road, one deep inside the Crabtree estate, where every street looked the same. It was a maze designed to confuse, the ideal place to strike and vanish. Over the next few weeks, the idea sat between them, simmering. When they met again, they were ready to act. The date was set. February 23rd, just past midnight. The call was made to the Turks line. A deal was arranged. What the gang didn't know was that the buyers weren't customers. They were predators. Behind the wheel that night was Mihai Dobre, a Romanian national who'd lived in the UK for years. He wasn't a violent man. He worked low in the gang's food chain, delivering products, taking risks while earning his cut. He knew the dangers, but until that night, he'd never had a problem. To be safe, his girlfriend, Anna Sealing, came along for the ride, sitting beside him as he navigated the dimly lit estate. What they didn't know was that two men were already waiting, hidden in the shadows. Hutchinson clutched the shotgun. Pycraft was ready to block the car. The estate was dead quiet, the streets pitch black. It was the perfect trap. and once Dobre entered it, there would be no way out. It was just past midnight on the 23rd of February, 2023, when Mihai Dobre turned his Toyota into the winding streets of the Crabtree estate in Peterborough. The estate was eerily quiet, a confusing sprawl of near-identical roads, all named Crabtree, where street signs seemed more decorative than functional. This wasn't a coincidence. It was the very reason Liz Hutchinson and Christopher Pycraft had chosen this location. Hutchinson and Pycraft were already watching from the shadows. Dobre, a trusted courier for the Turks County Lines gang, had made dozens of deliveries before without issue. But tonight felt different. His girlfriend, Anna Sealing, had accompanied him, not for protection, but to pass the time. Still, something felt off. As they circled the estate, headlights cutting through silence, the drop-off point seemed to vanish. No customers in sight. Just long rows of dark houses and dead ends. Growing uneasy, Dobre decided to drive out of the estate. That's when Christopher Pycraft stepped out of the shadows and waved him down. Dobre slowed the car, pulling up under a dim street lamp. From his driver's side mirror, he spotted movement, a second figure approaching from behind. Liz Hutchinson, wearing a hood, moving fast. He was armed with a shotgun. Sensing the trap, Dobre reacted instinctively. He slammed his foot on the accelerator, desperate to escape. But it was too late. In the panic, Liz Hutchinson pulled the trigger. The shotgun blast tore through the rear driver's side window with devastating force. The pellets struck Dobre in the back of the head. The vehicle jolted to a halt. Anna began screaming as blood filled the interior of the car. The sound echoed across the estate, waking nearby residents. Two brothers ran from their home after hearing the cries. What they found was horrifying. Dobre slumped forward, lifeless, with a massive wound to the back of his skull. Anna was hysterical, barely able to speak. One of the brothers called 999, while the other removed his jacket and pressed it to Dobre's head, trying desperately to stop the bleeding. Police arrived 20 minutes later, shortly followed by paramedics. Dobre was rushed to hospital, but he never regained consciousness. He was pronounced dead not long after. Meanwhile, Hutchinson and Pycraft had vanished into the shadows. No money, no drugs, just panic, and the blood of a man who was never supposed to die. The robbery without Plan B had failed, but the consequences were only just beginning. In the early hours of February 23, 2023, Mihai Dobre was pronounced dead in hospital after suffering a catastrophic shotgun wound to the back of the head. He had been ambushed during a late-night drug delivery on Peterborough's Crabtree estate, a quiet, residential area turned crime scene. The police response was immediate. Cambridgeshire police sealed off the estate, launching a major incident murder investigation. The area where Dobre was shot, a stretch of Crabtree described by locals as confusing and maze-like, became the center of an intensive forensic sweep. Officers canvassed the neighborhood, collected CCTV, and began analyzing the victim's mobile phone for clues. Detectives quickly learned that Dobre had been working for a county lines network known as the Turks. Using burner phones and coded messages, the gang delivered drugs across Peterborough. The phone number, cell site data, and call records all pointed police toward their first breakthrough. Then came a key witness, Anna Sealing, Dobre's girlfriend, who had accompanied him on the delivery. Traumatized but clear, she described one of the attackers. He had his hood up, but his face was visible. Her statement matched with footage taken from a neighbor's doorbell camera. The recording showed two men walking past shortly before the fatal shooting. One man turned to face the camera directly. That face was known to police. Liz Hutchinson, a man with a history of violence and a rap sheet that spanned years. By 1 p.m. the same day, Cambridgeshire police had already received multiple anonymous calls naming Hutchinson as the suspect. Some named Christopher Pycraft as well. The suspects hadn't gone far. While Hutchinson initially disappeared, Pycraft had done the unthinkable. He stayed local. In fact, he lived just 2 minutes from the murder scene, still inside the Crabtree estate. And he didn't lay low. Within 24 hours, Pycraft was seen out walking by a member of the Turks gang. The response was swift and brutal. A gang-affiliated dealer turned the car around and attacked him with a machete in broad daylight. Pycraft managed to block 2 of the blows with his arm before stumbling over a wall and fleeing. He suffered 2 large gashes and a fractured arm and turned up at hospital later that day. He told staff the injuries were self-inflicted, but medical staff were unconvinced, and so were the police. Meanwhile, Hutchinson had gone into hiding at a nearby traveller site, concealed inside a scrap vehicle. But he didn't stay there long. In a moment of panic, he called his grandmother, Diane Riley, from a burner phone he'd just purchased in town. "I've been a bad boy," he told her. She agreed to collect him from the area and took him back to her home in Skegness, over 90 miles away. There, she and Hutchinson's aunt, Jeannie Stewart, helped him dispose of his clothing. Police weren't far behind. Investigators traced his call records and knew his family were the most likely place he'd run. Just 2 days after the murder, on February 25, 2023, armed officers raided Riley's Skegness address. Hutchinson was arrested without resistance and taken into custody. His aunt and grandmother were later arrested as well. Both would face charges for conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. Back in Peterborough, Pycraft was next to be arrested, still recovering from the machete attack. When questioned by police about his injuries, he admitted, "One of the dealers did it." At first, Hutchinson refused to cooperate, answering no comment during early interviews. But by his 3rd police interview, he gave a written statement. Hutchinson told police that the shooting was an accident. He said that on the night of the incident, he and Pycraft had simply gone out for a walk. According to his statement, Pycraft unexpectedly handed him a shotgun. Hutchinson claimed he was holding it awkwardly, like a baby, and as the dealer's car drove past, in a panic, the weapon suddenly went off. He insisted he didn't mean to fire it and said he had no idea the shot would hit anyone. Hutchinson also denied that they were there to carry out a robbery, claiming there was no plan to steal anything from the dealer. But Pycraft wasn't having it. Hearing what Hutchinson had told police, he decided to come clean. He gave detectives a full statement, detailing every part of the plan. How the robbery was premeditated, how Hutchinson sourced the gun, how they staged the ambush and intended to steal the drugs. Pycraft admitted to conspiracy to rob, but insisted he never intended for Dobre to die. He believed Hutchinson fired what was meant to be a warning shot, but it struck Dobre fatally as he drove off. Pycraft's account matched Anna Seeling's eyewitness statement. It also aligned with ballistics and forensic findings at the scene. Most crucially, it helped police secure a murder charge against Hutchinson. Without that cooperation, the evidence may not have been strong enough to stick. Despite intense efforts, the shotgun used in the killing has never been recovered. The trial of Liz Hutchinson and Christopher Pycraft opened in June 2023 at Peterborough Crown Court. It was a case that had already drawn attention, not just for the killing itself, but for the reckless audacity behind it. At the heart of the proceedings was the murder of Mihai Dobre, a drug courier ambushed during a late-night run for the Turks County Lines gang. Now, the court would decide whether Hutchinson's shotgun blast was a tragic accident or a planned act of deadly intent. The prosecution laid out a clear and damning case. They argued that Hutchinson and Pycraft had deliberately conspired to lure a dealer to the Crabtree estate using a fake drug order, with the express intent to rob him. Prosecutors presented CCTV footage showing both men in the area minutes before the killing, including a doorbell camera that captured Hutchinson looking directly into the lens. Witness testimony from Mihai Dobre's girlfriend, Anna Seeling, who had been in the car during the attack, confirmed the presence and identity of the gunman. Forensic ballistics left little room for doubt. Dobre had been shot in the back of the head at close range while attempting to flee. Prosecutors dismissed any suggestion that the weapon discharged by accident. This, they said, was a robbery executed with a lethal threat, one that ended in murder. Hutchinson claimed in court that the shotgun discharged by accident, insisting he never intended to kill Mihai Dobre. He told the jury he was devastated and had only been holding the weapon for someone else. But a firearms expert testified that the trigger required deliberate pressure to fire, making his version unlikely. The prosecution argued that Hutchinson had brought the gun himself and that his account simply didn't match the evidence. The jury agreed. Christopher Pycraft, meanwhile, had already pleaded guilty to conspiracy to rob. His defense rested on his cooperation. He gave police a full account of the events, admitting his role in the robbery, but distancing himself from the shooting. He claimed Hutchinson had brought the gun and that the plan never involved actual violence. His testimony, prosecutors later admitted, was pivotal. Without Pycraft's confession and cooperation, the murder charge against Hutchinson may have been far harder to secure. On June 30, 2023, the verdict was delivered. Liz Hutchinson was found guilty of murder and conspiracy to commit robbery. The judge, His Honor Sean Enright, described Hutchinson as showing no genuine remorse, calling the killing a reckless and tragic escalation of criminality. He sentenced Hutchinson to life imprisonment, imposing a minimum term of 31 years before parole eligibility. Pycraft, for his part, was sentenced to 5 years and 3 months for conspiracy to rob. The court acknowledged his cooperation and accepted that without his early guilty plea, he could have faced up to 14 years in custody. His assistance with the prosecution was treated as a significant mitigating factor. The courtroom also heard about the role played by Hutchinson's relatives in helping him evade justice. His grandmother, Diane Riley, aged 65, and his aunt, Jeannie Stewart, aged 45, were both found guilty of conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. Each received a sentence of 9 months in prison. One mystery still remains. Despite extensive police efforts, the shotgun used in the murder was never recovered. It vanished the same night Mihai Dobre was killed. If you found this case as unbelievable as we did, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think justice was truly served? Make sure to like this video, subscribe for more real UK crime stories, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an upload. And don't forget, drop your take below. We read every comment.